Welcome one and all. I am Don Haas, as most of you know, Director of Teacher Programming at the Paleontological Research Institution and the facilitator for today's informal discussion on clean. Should we go, we're a small group, should we go around and introduce, or do we all know each other?
I don't think I know Melissa.
Okay, why don't we do a quick go around? You want to go next, Tamara?
Okay, I'm Tamara Ledley, longtime member of the Clean Network, one of the founding members. I've been involved, I led the development of the initial development of the Clean Collection and now involved in teaching global climate change to undergraduate business students and doing climate solutions workshops with the En-ROADS model virtually with participants of all ages.
All right, Katie, you want to go next?
Sure. Hi, everybody. I'm Katie Boyd. I work at Series Education and Outreach, and I'm the Clean Program Manager and based here in Boulder, Colorado area, which is the traditional lands of the Cheyenne, Arapaho, and Ute. And I go by she, her pronouns, and just excited to be back. I was on maternity leave for a couple of months, but back on clean calls as I can join. So nice to see you.
Welcome back, Mama. Gina, you want to go next?
I am Gina Fiorile, and I'm the Clean Program Coordinator, and in this role for about 6 months, so still learning, but getting more comfortable every day. And I am calling in from New York State today, in the Adirondacks, but I live in Vermont.
Jim, you want to go next?
Sure. Hi, Jim Callahan, Mobile Climate Science Labs, which is part of climatechangeeducation.org. I am the Climate STEM Education and Action Specialist in Lowell School in Washington, D.C., and a mentor for Climate Club DC.
Cheney, you want to go next?
Hi, I'm Cheney. I'm a staff developer at the Reading and Writing Project at Teachers College at Columbia. I'm also the sustainability specialist there. I train teachers mainly on literacy, but I've been doing more interdisciplinary work. I have my own organization called the Climascope Project that's trying to make it easier for K-12 teachers to infuse climate change and environmental justice into their curriculum. And I'm also starting these climate action teams, which are kind of groups of retired teachers and students collaborating on various topics of their interest. Eric, you want to go next?
Sure. Thanks, Cheney. Calling in like Jim and Cheney from Oakland, California. So we're all local. Actually have had a chance to see each other recently in person, but all three of us at various times. I do climate science education right now, mostly professional development workshops, K-12, and for educators as well, but have a long time history working with students, informal education at a local science center here in Oakland as well. And we're on the Ohlone lands, so that's a lot of monuments here, just kind of commemorating those original groups that were here.
And Melissa, you want to wrap us up?
Hi everyone, I'm Melissa Rummel. I work at UCAR, the UCAR Center for Science Education. I do a lot of content development around Earth system sciences, weather, climate, stuff like that. And teacher support, training for teachers and workshops, like often on different direct funded projects that we have connections to. Yeah, I've been at UCAR for about 3 years. Before that, I worked at and we're out of Boulder, Colorado. And before that, I worked at the Denver Museum of Nature and Science as an informal educator and teacher trainer for a long time. And I also was a high school science teacher in Colorado too. So I've worked with students and teachers for about the last 20 years.
All righty, announcements. Jim, you want to go ahead?
Yes, thanks, Don. I'd like to make an announcement for a very important part of our field that doesn't often have a direct voice at Clean. And I would say the folks I'm about to speak of are among the most clever among us, maybe the most clever among us, but they need some recognition for their work. On Sunday, as Eric kind of was alluding to, we had the Bay Area Science Festival return. Our science festivals are returned in public. And one of the biggest exhibitors and sponsors, for the second time now, after previous years coming by our booths and studying them, taking photographs and actually pictures, have replicated them. So they make them quite large. And here's the thing is they have over the years told our science centers, you don't want to be at the science centers. You don't want to do community events, and hands-on science isn't worth it if you're going to do anything about energy and climate change. So don't bother. At least that's the arguments I heard very early on that. And the argument is it's not scalable. It's not worth the money. And yet they spent over 100 times the amount of money replicating what we do than what we spent to make them in the first place. The number of people, the equipment, the transportation. What they do is they take our demonstrations, our labs. So this is from the Clean Network. They replicate them and they strip away anything about climate change and anything about energy efficiency, and they make the theme human energy. So I think you can probably put together which company that is. I don't mind naming them, but they are based here in the Bay Area. And to me, is I just a thing of one is I gotta give it off for cleverness that they've done the second time. So that's what I'm announcing. They did it the second time. But I also think we should learn from that when they say something isn't scalable, that's a code word. The word isn't that it can't be replicated because they did it, but it's something they don't want to support. That's what scalable means. It's not scalable in our view, but if we like it, we will scale it. So anyway, that was the thing, but maybe on a maybe a more pure, happier note, public events are back and still COVID safe, but really, it was a magnificent day on Sunday. Thank you.
Thanks. Gina?
I just wanted to share that we have another webinar happening tonight with Clean. I'm gonna put the link in the chat. I'll put the link in the chat, but we have a teacher joining us, and it's called Exploring Hands-On STEM-Based Energy Activities for the Classroom, and Dana Hain from UNC Chapel Hill Institute for the Environment. And they're going to be talking about incorporating hands-on STEM-based energy activities into the classroom. So we're still encouraging people to register for that, and there's the link.
And I will note that we are co-hosting a workshop on Monday with the Climate Mental Health Network on addressing climate emotions in the classroom, and that link is for the working agenda, and it's got the registration link in it as well, and very much looking forward to that. And while I'm talking, I'll also note that I've mentioned CUBO, the Cornell University Borehole Observatory, which is a step in the process of Cornell moving to being carbon neutral, and this is about heating the entire campus, roughly 300 buildings, using deep geothermal heat. And they are actually going to, they have signed the contracts, and drilling is actually going to start at the end of May. And we are very excited about that. And there will be more information coming on that.
This is the last time I'll mention this. This is the third time, but tomorrow is the first climate action team meeting. They'll happen once a month on Wednesdays, and so if you know any students or retired teachers K-12 who might be interested in joining, I've made like a more simplified one-page flyer that gives kind of some succinct summary of what it is, and there's 2 links, one for adults to apply and one for students to apply.
And is this anywhere?
This is anywhere. So they'll be meeting once a month through Zoom. And so it can be anywhere. And it's 4:30 Pacific time, 7:30 East Coast time is the time right now. As it grows, we might do more times to incorporate more people. But for now, it's 4:30 Pacific and 7:30 East Coast. And it's focused on, like, it's student driven, and it's focused on their strengths and their interests of how they want to engage with climate related topics, if that makes sense. Anyway, I'll put my email address in case you have more questions about it too.
And because what you're doing is so important. I needed to help on this, or help on things. I had a nice talk with Bay Area Youth Climate Summit people, because they had a booth on Sunday at Bay Area Science Festival. I mean, they're really an outstanding group of they've got a lot going. So we have to get them linked into it.
Yeah, I have a meeting in about an hour with Jen Kretzer about ways to kind of link up the youth climate summits, hopefully, and have a kind of two-way street between.
Absolutely. It is fantastic. Please go that way. Bay Area Youth Climate Summit isn't
necessarily connected.
They're really strong, and they have a connect. They're known by Jen, but I mean, they're
okay. If you have any connections to them, I would love to talk to them. That would be super helpful.
Thanks.
I've been still working on my climate teacher professional learning community, which we're actually renaming a Climate Change Education Accelerator, which aligns with what you're doing in a way, but it's for in the classroom teachers that will work together to develop investigations that are relevant to their local communities around climate change. So there are synergies there also that may be interesting to pursue.
Yeah, I would love to talk more with you. It's open to current educators in the classroom. I'm just finding that they have so much else on their plate. I'm trying to create a fund where I could pay some teachers to come, but yes, I would love to talk to you more about it.
Okay. Yes, the reason my effort has gotten a slow start, I am working with a group of teachers, but on a just keep connected basis while we're searching for funding to actually pay them to participate. So that's a really major challenge.
Yeah. Will you private message me your email address, or just put it in the chat?
Okay.
Thanks.
Other announcements, other things you want to talk about? And I noticed Deb came in a little bit later than others. Do you want to introduce yourself and say hi, say what you're up to?
Oh, I'm mostly lurking. I was a environmental editor for a long time and putting together a science toy for kids, and so that's taking a while. So this is more information gathering, very slow. That's it. Yeah.
Okay. Well, feel free to ask any questions. It's a informal session today, so no major agenda.
I'd like to put forward a topic of discussion, if it's okay.
But if I can mention one thing, Deb, it's okay to lurk. Just know that we are going to be welcoming. Okay, so we're welcoming you. Thanks for letting me interrupt it, Janie.
A topic came up 2 weeks ago. I'd be curious to get your all thoughts on. A big part of good climate education is helping students come up with local solutions, local actions that they can take. A lot of this is focused, I think, correctly on mitigation and drawing down emissions and making things more sustainable. My question is, as we see more effects of climate change, to what extent should we be encouraging or asking teachers and students to do work and actions around adaptation?
That's a good question. And
I actually think that it's important because you want what the students are doing to address their interests and their concerns for their community. And as I've been working with my group of teachers for this professional learning community, trying to identify an issue in which they can really participate in a meaningful way, I think that, whichever avenue it falls into, mitigation or adaptation, are equally as important, because everybody's going to have to adapt in some way or another. It's not like you can only do one at this point.
Yeah, I think it's hugely important to recognize that we're going to have to adapt. We don't have a choice. And so, we can adapt by design or by disaster, and I would prefer to do it by design.
Right.
We just recently wrapped up a project. We had an NSF grant. We were working with school district down in coastal Louisiana, specifically about adaptation and resilience. And so, we designed curriculum for them to learn kind of the science behind the unique challenges that their coastal environment faces. But then the students really came up with the adaptation project themselves. And we had some funding for 4 different high schools, and each school got to propose projects, and they all ended up doing something at their campus. They had the opportunity to do something in their larger community, but logistically, it was just easier for them to do something at their campus. And, some of the things seem, it was hard for them. It was hard for the teachers to manage. So just like I just mentioned, just because when you're getting, youth involved with these projects, they do need a lot of support, and depending on, what they try to do. But one school decided to build some decking over an area that always experiences flooding. And so it's kind of always wet and squishy. And, we talked about how, it's Louisiana. So they're below water table line there, right? So everything's squishy. But so that was what they wanted to do to adapt, to make their, outside environment more accessible, and to kind of deal with the water that's always covering the land. And another school actually wanted to just install drinking fountains with the places to refill their water bottles, because their school didn't even have a recycling program yet. And so they were trying to just reduce waste and things like that. So that was a little beyond, it wasn't directly related to adapting, but it's an adaptation. It wasn't exactly what we were going for, but they were really excited about it. So we let them kind of go with it, because that was the project they wanted to do. But we found that they needed, with building the deck, they needed help because they were high schoolers. They never built a deck before. So we got some volunteers from local builders, and they had to get permission from the school district to put it in addition of a structure. And so there's a lot of steps and things like that. But overall, I think it was a super rewarding experience for everyone, for the teachers. But I just mentioned that it's not oh yeah, we'll just go do an adaptation project. They require a lot of work, and they're really hard, but they're really awesome. So.
And I bet you could probably go into all of the steps of that and align them to a lot of the standards.
Yeah.
So the students are really learning the skills that they're going to need in the future.
Yeah, well, I spoke to a colleague's class, teacher ed class, a month or so ago, and one of the students asked, what if there was one single thing I could change about schooling, what would it be? And that's having students do things that matter to the world outside of school. And I think adaptation and mitigation is a really rich and powerful example of what I have in mind when I said that. And I'll also note that Erie County, where Buffalo is, where I live, is in the process of trying to better connect to students for their climate action plan. And the city of Buffalo is doing a full day on climate change professional development May 5th for all of the middle school and high school science teachers, with one of the main goals is helping them figure out how to infuse climate change across the science curriculum. And a second goal is that the high schools starting next year will offer a half credit climate change elective as one of their science options. And as far as I know, that's the only example of a large district or entity doing that anywhere. And if you know of other examples, I'm interested, and that's connected to the Erie County Action Plan, because folks from the county are involved in the professional development programming as well as the curriculum materials development. So I'm pretty excited about that. Jim?
Yes, I want to reference something that if I characterize it, I'm not trying to be the one to characterize it, but just more to reference it. People can correct me or change me on things. But this is also a way, Cheney, I mean, I'm definitely totally don't see a problem with seeing that climate action or the programs that the way you framed it and things has adaptation, mitigation, adaptation, and absolutely for all the reasons people said. What a reference is, since most of us, or maybe all of us, to one degree, to a lesser degree or a great degree, will work with federal funded programs. It's at least referencing how that has been for the federal programs. And I mean, we've even had some discussion in Clean. Frank has said some things. We have some, in some of the other meetings we're in of, let's see, during the past administration, federal government people have to adapt to whoever's at the top or the people are doing it. And you have to find the compromise of the way to do things. And a lot was to see that, okay, we're going to fund things that have to do with resilience. That's something that's going to be pretty hard for the current administration, past administration to not even let us do that. And so there are grants out there now, current grants that are framed as resilience. And I think that would be another reason why, if we aren't working with them and supporting them and doing that, we're of it. But okay, so that's one. And then one of the ways I've heard it characterized by really dear, people we really care about, I care about in the federal government, have characterized what goes on in the federal government as whiplash. You've spent all these years adapting to that and making resilience the word that you use, and now all of a sudden you got the Biden administration saying quite different words, very different words, and kind of essentially saying, "Come on, we got to do way more than we're talking about." So how do we adapt? How do we adapt in that respect? But it just, I think we have to just recognize how the federal government is something that is a bit of a weather vane that maybe others of us aren't, but federal government is important to work with, right? Clean wouldn't exist without the federal government. But anyway, just to be aware of where the weather vane has been being pushed over the last few years regarding that adaptation. Does anyone think, did I totally get it screwed up? Is that way off base, the kind of stuff I was referencing?
No, I don't think so.
No, I don't think so at all. I think that's like the reality of these administrative changes. And then, we have to figure out how to navigate through those. And it's frustrating sometimes because, like you said, we make a bunch of progress and then, then we pull out of the Paris thing, right? And then now we're back in. And so it can be really, frustrating, right? You feel like you haven't made, but at the same time, I feel like holistically there's been progress forward, especially at the grassroots level and at the local and state. Deb, you mentioned the New Jersey efforts and the statewide project that recently kind of, happened. And I totally agree too. I think adaptation, it's happening now. And part of what the students want to know is, what do I do about it? But they also want to know, how do I live through it? And how do I survive? And how do I become more resilient? So, all the projections show that there are changes are happening, and things like sea level rise, even if we stabilize the ppms, that's going to continue because there's just so much inertia in the system for hundreds of years. So students are looking at change, and that is the future. So to really prepare them, as you said, Don, through design and not through disaster, to give them the tools, all the tools to build a positive future, to see towards something that they want. Like for me, I've talked a lot about community gardens, and that's incredibly empowering and is so local, hyper local. Grow good food for yourself and your families and your community, save, reduce your carbon footprint. So there's very specific examples that students can take action on, but also the knowledge of what is happening, kind of what we're thinking is coming, what we're seeing is coming, what the models show us about the West, for example, getting drier. That's the environment in which they will be living in the future. So we would do them a disservice to not show them that and tell them that. But where we do them an additional disservice in the way that we've talked about in many sessions, by saying the world is ending, or kind of this sort of hyper franticness where we're like, we got to do it now, and just, we got 10 years. And if we only message that kind of direness without that starting with the front facing solutions. And so I don't know, it's for me, I'm still navigating this personally, like how to tell the whole story, but to not get folks stuck in stasis, right? Just not having people freeze, and really empowering our youth to move forward and not take the reins, because that's the other piece of the conversation I've really appreciated that we've talked about. We're not passing the baton to the students. We are carrying it together. And ultimately, yes, they will take it and then their kids will take it, but we're all in this together. And so how do we just be real about the whole thing, I guess is kind of where I'm at.
Yeah, I know. I have much to say on that, but I'm going to go to Cheney first, who's had his hand up.
Yeah, I mean, I'm struck by, so a year ago, Emily Corrin came to talk to us about positive deviance and ways to like tell stories. I'm baffled by how much good work is going on in climate education, but the lack of cohesion around it. I'm wondering if the vision I would have is like for the work that Melissa's doing and Don, like the work that's going on in that high school, like if there's a way to capture like and tell stories about and give examples in like a kind of more structured way. And if I know that clean kind of has to like separate kind of its like, I don't know, scientific education side to maybe the more like active side. I'm just wondering, is there any kind of organizations that you know of that's trying to capture all these different things happening and like tell story? Is my question making sense? Like, I'm just struck by like, Melissa, did you document what was happening in Louisiana, and like how could you help those teachers and students celebrate that with their community, but then also like document in a way that could be amplified across the country and serve as an example?
Yeah, well, COVID was happening when our project got to the implementation phase, when it was time for the students to start doing all of the stuff that they'd been preparing to do. So that was a huge bummer, but our plans to share it with the community it was going to be a summit, and all of the 4 high schools were going to come together and present about their projects. And they also were going to invite like local government and community members and school board members and things like that. So that was our big grand plan, to kind of share all this work with the larger community. And of course that had to be just canceled because it just took a couple of years for COVID to get to a place where we could get together. So that didn't happen. And I think this school year, the curriculum is continuing. The teachers are using the resilience curriculum and teaching about adaptation and stuff. They don't have the funding that was part of our grant to do the projects, but they're referencing those projects and they're talking about them with other students. And kind of a new kind of final project that we wrote into it would be for them to, because they create like a school resilience plan, right, with like 4 or 5 different adaptation actions that they could take. And, when we had the funding, they actually implemented one of those projects, but now they don't have the funding, but we've written it in and encouraged them and provided training for the teachers to have the students present these ideas to like the local school board or something like that. So that's our plan. I don't know that they've quite taken it and run with it yet, but we're hoping that they will, and we're still in communication with them. I think it's still been kind of a rough COVID year with school and stuff like that. So we'll see what happens. But the cool thing is that the curriculum we wrote is now, this is in Terrebonne Parish School District in Louisiana, and it's going to be taught every year moving forward with their environmental science classes. So we're really hopeful that we'll start to see some more inspiration and like just understanding of the need for adaptation and things like that as the kids and the teachers get more comfortable with it, right? And the students are learning about it every year. So
yeah, and I'll note another district that we're working with at PRI is Prince George's County, Maryland, which is a large district adjacent to DC. And I think 4 years ago is when we started working with them on their then new required course in all, I think 28 of their high schools, I think is how many high schools they have. It's a 130,000 student district, and it's a new required course called Biogeochemical Systems that has a lot of climate change in the curriculum, and we've been working with them on that. And now we have started working on the revision of their environmental science course curriculum, and we we have a NOAA BWET grant in with them, which we have a meeting about tomorrow with NOAA, which is encouraging that we have a meeting, but we're not funded yet. But that includes engaging students in sharing their work with the community. And again, they also connecting to their county's climate action plan. We have a stolen idea called a data jam, which is kind of like a science fair, but in this case focused on mitigation and climate change issues within the county. And I'm very excited about that. And going back a couple of steps, we've got this climate emotions workshop coming up on Monday, and one of the most effective ways of dealing with climate anxiety and climate depression is to get to work on addressing the issues, and that can help preserve everyone's sanity. So we're trying to do that everywhere.
So Don, just let me follow up with that, because Prince George's County, Maryland is, so I've actually been doing a series of climate solutions workshops with En-ROADS with, with the schools in Prince George's County, Maryland.
Oh, awesome.
The last one was actually for their Academy of Health Sciences, which is collaboration with the school district and Prince George's Community College. And I did a full simulation there, which is a 3-hour event. And in addition to all of the different government groups, they also added the Prince George's County Student Environmental Alliance as a representative group, using with their briefing sheet focused on the aspects of the Prince George's County climate action plan. So there's just a connection that I've been actually doing these workshops for them for the past 1.5 years.
So Godfrey. We love Godfrey.
Actually, I don't know Godfrey. I've been dealing with Donald Bell. Do you know Donald Bell?
Yeah, Donald's part of all the teams just mentioned. He's on the curriculum writing team for the environmental science course. He's part of the grant team for the NOAA BWET, and he directs their nature center. So
I see, yeah.
The district has their own nature center, and Donald's the director of that. So
anyway,
so Godfrey Rangasamy is the director of science for the district.
I see.
Jim?
Yes, so I couldn't help, I want to bring something up that, especially for you, Don and Tamara, others can hear in on this too, is the timing should be right to take action on this one. Is if we want is the AAAS conference will be back in Washington, D.C. in 2023. I think it's early, I know it's early March.
Yes, it is.
I haven't contacted the people who specifically do this yet, but I'm confident they're going to want a family science days, and we'll see that. Now the part I haven't committed yet to doing family science days, but that's just a matter of getting our people in Montgomery County, one county to the north, and Lowell School to be wanting to do that. But where I'm going around to is the way we always do AAAS Family Science Days is we're invited to do booths, but we then talk to them about, let's have a whole bunch of booths that work with us next to us, right? A whole bunch of them represented. And of course they love that, because then we got 5 more great booths or something. Howard University, NOAA will be there. But I mean, that could be an outreach to the aspect of the work you're doing, Don. The requirement is that it has a component. It doesn't have to all be about this, but something that's hands-on, something that's about STEM or science that they can do. And if you're weak on that, we can share that, or Howard University can share things, and just people keep come and do it. But it's a great opportunity to reach the public in the DC area and be taken seriously. Of course, Tamara can test, or because of Tamara, AAAS is a very prestigious organization to work with. It's very pleasurable to work with them. But it would be great to be able to connect the Prince George's County and the Montgomery County and the DC people all together.
Also, if you want to connect to the education section, I'm secretary of the education section, so I'm actually in constant communication about the meetings and things. So, it's another avenue. If you have a proposal that you want to have vetted by a section, you can send it through the education section through me.
When are proposals due?
You know, I'm not really sure yet. I think they've just recently announced it. Probably won't be for a while, but I mean, right now, actually, they'll probably be getting soon to the symposium proposal process. We just finished the, well, we are in the midst of the fellows selection process. So our section, the education section could nominate 10 people for to be AAAS fellows. And just for those of you who may be interested, one of the requirements is you be a continuous member for 4 years at the time you're nominated. I'm constantly looking for climate change educators that that fit that categorization. Actually, Cheryl Manning, many of you probably know Cheryl Manning. We nominated her this year to be a AAAS fellow.
If I would, Don, just with it, absolutely. That's how good AAAS is. It has more than one section that's just outstanding that is worth to work with. I mean, absolutely, education and being part of the conference itself and Science Magazine and all that goes with. So if I'm bringing up the Family Science Days things, it's only to emphasize how valuable it is to work with AAAS. That's more held by the public outreach, the communication side of things. But this is what I would be doing now. I mean, Tamara was not last time we were. Your authority in AAAS was not quite as solidified. So when I talk to them at the other side, it'll be, look, we got to be making sure that we're working education and Tamara and making sure we do that. I will give a plug for the federal government programs. That last time in 2019, when it was in DC, we invited NOAA, several programs from NOAA. We also invited NASA, Landsat, and Terra. NOAA came, one of NOAA programs came, but NASA said, we don't know if we have enough people to be at the Family Science Days, the public side, and have a table inside the paid part. And so they didn't come like NOAA did. And then when they came over and they saw what was going on Family Science Day, and 5,000 people of all ethnicities and all backgrounds having a great.
You should emphasize that, Jim, is that Family Science Day is open to the public. You do not have to register for the meeting to go.
It's free.
It's free.
They said we made a big mistake because, yeah, we should have a booth inside and pay for it. But this other place, and it's free to booth people too. It's like, no, this is where the action was. So maybe we come back to it, Tamara, if you're offering for us to, or for Don's programs and things to work with education, we want to make sure that your work is highlighted at Family Science Days.
Okay. I'll get more information about the AAAS and meeting for this year and share it the next time.
Yeah, that sounds good. And putting something out on the list too would be great, because I'm wondering about PRI getting a booth at Family Science Day there. That sounds like a.
Don, if you went independently on that, no problem. I wouldn't take any offense, but I really know it. And if you want to be there, and as long as I have the support that I'm, if I get our support, you have a booth. I mean, I know how it works, and there's no way it would be turned down.
Good to know. On a somewhat different note, I should have mentioned this earlier, but I am the titular co-host of the workshop. I just put the link in the chat for the International Ocean Discovery Program workshop in DC, June 14th and 15th, I believe are the dates. And that is the goal of the workshop, is to improve outreach for the program with special attention to issues of justice, equity, diversity, and inclusion. And we need more climate change educators to come. So expenses are covered if you can join us, and the application deadline is April 30th. And Lisa White and I from the University of California Museum of Paleontology at Berkeley, and I are the co-hosts. All the info is there. And there will be hybrid aspects to the meeting as well.
Okay, for the I just looked up the AAAS, and it's a proposal for scientific session panel workshop or 10-minute lightning talk is June 16th. And I'll have to find out separately about Family Science Days.
Okay, great, thanks. So you said that's for session proposals, that's not for individual abstracts, right?
AAAS doesn't do, so the AAAS doesn't do individual abstracts. What they do is you put together you can look up the different kinds of venues, but you'll put together a session of an hour or an hour and a half, and you actually have to get the commitments of all the people that you're going to have speak at it, and have them all committed. This is one of the, I think, difficulties of them getting proposals, is that there's a lot of work up front that you have to coordinate a lot of people, and then there's a significant chance you won't get accepted. They have a limited number of spots. So I would say if you have a 25% hit rate of getting one accepted, you're doing well. A couple of years ago, when AAAS went virtual the first time, I offered to do climate solutions workshops for them, and I was offering one, and they asked me to do 3. So I ended up having 3 days in a row. I had a workshop each day. I didn't do that this past year. This past year was a little bit difficult because they were originally going to be hybrid, and then about 2 months ahead of time, they went completely virtual just because the cases were going. It was in February, and cases were getting really high after the holidays, after December, January. So they pivoted. And so I didn't do one this past year, but there are avenues for having, it was kind of outside Family Science Days, but it wasn't part of the symposium proposals either. So I can try to find out if there are other ways of having these kinds of public events.
Cool, thank you. Other things folks want to share, ask? Did we spend enough time on discussions of engaging kids in mitigation and adaptation? And Gina's got a hand
up. I just wanted to say, while we're on the topic of conferences and that type of thing, I'm working with some folks, my colleagues in Series E&O, and some other people from the network, Jen Kretzer and maybe Reb from Action for Climate Emergency, on a proposal for NAAE. And I know I have already brought this up a few times, but if anyone is planning on going, I just wanted to say one more time that you're more than welcome to join us on that. But I've already said it a few times, so I just want to make sure people know.
Where is it this year?
It's in Tucson. It's in October.
Is the deadline already passed for submitting proposals for that?
No, it's Friday.
It's this Friday. It's this Friday. Okay.
Yep. I think that's the 29th. Yeah. This Friday.
Okay. Thanks.
Yep. We had a great team effort on submitting proposals for AGU too, so I'm very excited about that.
I mean, I'm going to submit a proposal, but if there's any way I could either help or if it makes sense to be a part of that team, I would be happy to.
Yeah, we're thinking, we're not 100% sure yet because these things, I feel like they always come together last minute, but I think we're going to do 2 sessions, one focused on civic engagement and one focused on climate action. And one will be in person and one will be virtual. And we're going to have folks that are attending virtually are going to kind of manage the virtual one, and folks attending in person kind of manage the in-person one. So we'll have 2 different, or the symposia sessions. So if either of those topics are interesting to you, Jamie, we would definitely love to have you join, but no pressure at
Okay.
all.
I think we're gonna submit for a virtual thing for that NAAA. That's what we're talking about, right?
Yeah. Yep.
So maybe I don't think I'll be going in person, but potentially I could help out with the virtual.
Oh, sweet. Yeah, I'm thinking too, it might be good if other folks are planning on presenting sessions to have some kind of list. I could make maybe a list and see. We can try to go to each other's and that type of thing too if other people are submitting. So the other thing I didn't realize about NAAA is that it's not like AGU where they accept pretty much almost everything that's submitted. I think NAAA is a little bit more choosy with it, so there's no guarantee that we'll get accepted. So I think kind of submitting with a larger group and more people behind us is smart. I think it'll increase our chances of getting accepted. So.
Jenny?
Circling back to the adaptation conversation, so two weeks ago, Frank is not here, but I trust and respect his opinion a lot. He seemed to have some really strong opinions of that it should not be adaptation that we focus on in terms of action. So it seems like we're all kind of preaching to the choir a little bit. We all believe that adaptation is important to focus on for action. I was hoping I could wrap my brain around a little bit around like the counter arguments for that. Like, is it that adaptation takes away from mitigation? Is it that by focusing on adaptation, you naturally focus on like doom and gloom a little bit more? Like, has anybody thought, I haven't thought too carefully about this, so I'm curious if anybody has like thought carefully around the counter arguments for this.
Yeah, I mean, I can just speculate that I think it's matches your speculation. People worry about it being a signal that you're throwing in the towel and doom and gloom and things along those lines. And I do agree that it needs to be handled carefully. And another is that if you believe you can come up with a technical fix, then you maybe don't need to do the hard work and then and then I fear you might be wrong if the technical fix doesn't actually fix. So I think those are the major concerns, but I don't know.
I think that I think the issue is that students can do something about adaptation that has concrete results, so it makes it much more relevant to them. Yes, students can, try to put pressure on for legislators and big businesses to address the mitigation, but it doesn't have a concrete outcome where they are. And I think that that's an important relevance piece that is helpful to get students engaged.
Eric's got his hand up.
Yeah, kind of like agreeing with what you're saying about does it abdicate our responsibility to solve the problem, by just pivoting to adaptation. Jonathan Foley from Project Drawdown posted something on LinkedIn last week. It was this mechanical tree, it was this metal tree that was a carbon sequestering awesome tool. And he was like, this is great, but regular trees work really well for this, so it's like, we want to, tech ourselves out of this sometimes as a way of abdicating responsibility for the true solutions and really pulling the carbon, stabilizing the carbon and pulling it back out. But again, I think it's the reality of our world too, that it is changing. So I agree with you, Don. I think that's the biggest argument is, so a lot of the conversations I hear now are really, we got to do both. We really got to do both. We got to imagine a future when we have stabilized the PPMs, that's what I really like about Drawdown is they've done the metrics and they, it changes every day, right? Because we do more or less than we need to. So that end goal point of getting the PPM stabilized and then bringing them down is always going to be a moving target. But it's important to have that sort of be there and sort of have that be sort of the guiding thing, because otherwise, if we never get the ppms down or we keep increasing them, we're never going to solve the problem, right? So we really do have to keep our eye on the prize. And yet, again, with all of the inertia in the system and the change that's happening now and will continue to happen, we have to kind of be real about that too, in my mind. So it's for me at this point, it's really not one or the other. It's both.
Yeah, and Melissa's got a hand up. It's just Cheney, but Melissa first.
Right.
So, I mean, kind of like what Eric was just saying, it's really both. And I think for our project in Louisiana that I was talking about earlier, we were focusing on resilience, and really mitigation and adaptation are both components of resilience, right? And so, of course, I think like the big message that we were trying to get out to communities is that there's no one solution, there's no one fix, and there's no even just one action that every community should do, right? Like each community has different actions that are more accessible, that are more practical for them. And so I think when you open it up to, well, let's figure out what we can do and what's most important to our community, or like what aligns most with our values, or what people will get on board with the most. And if it's an adaptation action, great. And if it's a mitigation action, great, right? Because both of them are needed. And so I guess for us, like we had that, we were kind of all working under resilience. So it was climate resilience, right? And so whether it was adaptation or mitigation wasn't the main focus. So I don't know if that would be helpful, but just thought I'd add that.
Yeah, that feels like the right way to think about it. This idea of like practicality, like what community, teachers, students can and want to do feels really important. But this idea that it's connected to like local concrete actions and like making kids and teachers feel like they have some kind of control over the things that they can do feels really important. Whether it's, I like that, like resilience bucketing both adaptation and mitigation together. That makes a lot of sense to me.
Oh yeah, I saw your email and I did.
Yeah, and just another thought on your initial comments. You mentioned, people talking about there being 10 years. If we don't do X by 10 years from now, we're all doomed. And I hate that. And my response to that is generally, it's too late. Let's get to work anyway. And we humans are routinely too late in responding to disasters, but that doesn't mean don't respond. It means it would have been better if you responded earlier. We were too late on slavery and Hitler and civil rights and COVID and Putin and on and on and on. But just because we were too late, that doesn't mean sit on your butt and don't do anything. It means you got to work harder, and you got to work now, and it's incredibly urgent. And Jim, go ahead.
Well, I almost want to just let it end on that note, Don.
Yeah.
I was kind of debating whether to say anything because we have 3 minutes left. I could say something, but I don't want it to be we're running out of time on things. I don't feel I have to say anything.
Okay. You can if you want to.
Okay, so I'll see if I can make this quick. An interesting conversation we had with the ACE International meeting recently was that some of the people from the other countries were listening in on American conversations, and there's now, of course, the emphasis on action as that finally, where we laid on that, we should have been, that's something I think, but they would say, well, what are you doing about the science? Are you dropping the science? And I think STEM and science is a good example of that's, there's art, there's so many ways that we do human communication, but STEM and science are the strong points to get what's factually true and what's real. There is a thing of knowing, if we're talking about mitigations and things, there's sorting out the things that really will help or really do something, and those are actually just greenwash and cover. Like, well, we can take coal is okay because we can just put it all underground as liquid carbon dioxide. So it's actually okay because we can take care of the problem. Sorting out it's okay. We'll just move, right? So it's sorting that out from the things that, hey, here in the Bay Area, we better start worrying about Oakland Airport, San Francisco Airport, and a whole bunch of the Bay Area is going to go underwater. What are we going to do? So, thanks.
Got 2 minutes left. Any closing thoughts? Thinking I'm going to sneeze, maybe.
Yeah, thanks for helping me think through that. That was super helpful. I appreciate that.
and said, you know.
Okay, well, maybe we'll call it a day. Thank you all, and we'll see you
Thank you.
next time.
Thank you.
And join
Thanks,
us
John.
for Climate Emotions. Bye-bye.
Thanks, Don.
Thank you.